Alright, so this video is just going to be kind of a couple things that I probably should have talked about a little bit in the how to wheelie video I made, but I just didn't want it to get too long and have too much shit, so I'll put it in this. And then also another method of learning foot brake. Yeah, so I guess there's really only just a couple things that I felt like I should talk about that I didn't really in the last video, and that is just that if you're trying to learn to wheelie or trying to learn anything on a bike where you're kind of pushing yourself, most likely you are going to crash, and that's just kind of something that you need to be okay with, or not okay with crashing, but the idea that you could crash, right? Like you have to know that that's most likely going to happen. Depending on whatever you're trying to learn, the chances of crashing are higher or lower. But if you're a complete beginner trying to learn wheelies, it is almost guaranteed that no matter what method you use, you are going to crash to some extent. I don't mean that you're necessarily going to cartwheel your bike across the parking lot and seriously break shit, but you're probably going to at least drop your bike to some extent. So just something you need to, I guess, be aware of. No matter what all these other guides and tutorials of how to wheelie tell you, like, oh, this is 100% safe, like, there is, unless you're using some sort of weird automatic braking or like one of those wheelie machines, like there is always going to be a chance that you're gonna crash to some extent. So yeah, it's not safe, I guess, is what I'm saying. So don't, anyone that says like this method or whatever method is 100% safe, you won't fall, don't believe it. You're probably gonna crash. Which brings me to my next thing, which is you need to not be afraid to crash or afraid to drop your bike. I know that's easier said than done, and I'm not saying to be reckless, you know, like you can be afraid, but you can't be so terrified that anytime you go to pull the front wheel up, you're just thinking, oh, I hope I don't crash. Because that's just going to take away, that's just going to take your focus off of actually what you're trying to do, which is learn to do a wheelie or whatever. So don't try not to be afraid. And I guess the ways to be less scared of learning to do wheelies is to either just figure out what works for you. If you're trying one method and making no progress and crashing, or just making no progress, try a different method. There's definitely plenty of videos and guides on YouTube. Get a different bike, a smaller bike. Get the smallest bike you can when you're learning, ideally. Put as much crash protection on the bike as you can, I guess, except on a Grom. Don't put a cage on a Grom, but that's a totally different thing. Get, like, at a minimum you should be wearing at least a helmet, but I mean, get as much gear for yourself as you need to feel comfortable. Bring someone with you. Don't practice alone. That way at least you know if you do mess up really bad, you've got someone there to at least help you get your bike home and get yourself home. But yeah, I mean, anything you can do to just make yourself less afraid is what you need to do. I mean, that can also be just taking each step of learning whatever you're trying to learn, so wheelies, slower. Spend more time practicing tiny clutch ups, spend more time doing brake drills, you know, just whatever you gotta do to be comfortable. I think that's all I can really think of. But the main thing is just you're gonna at least probably drop your bike. So you gotta be ready for that. You gotta be okay with that. So and that'll go a long way. Like with learning anything on a bike, if you're so afraid of damaging your bike that it's just you're gonna end up being all like scared and rigid on the bike, and that's not gonna help you. So don't do that. Figure out, you know, whatever you need to do to not be terrified, and I think that's it. All right, so this is gonna be the I feel like I don't see videos on this method a lot, but to me, it's, if you can do it, it is the best way to learn foot brake. It's going to be the fastest. You are still probably going to loop, so don't think that it's safe by any means. It's just the safest. It won't work for everyone depending on your bike and how tall you are. So, and it's going to feel super awkward at first, so you just got to try it and give it a couple tries and see if it's going to work for you or not. But all it is you're going to be doing the same brake drills, but instead of rolling, you're going to start from a dead stop. So first gear, right foot always stays on the peg, always stays over the brake. You're using the brake. You're going to be. Left foot's going to be on the ground. You're going to have to probably slide your ass like kind of to the side on your seat. That's why this doesn't really work for some people. If you're too short or your bike's, you know, if you're trying to learn on a gold wing, this isn't going to be the method for you. But same deal, you know, pull the clutch in with preferably one finger, two if you have to, and you're just gonna give it some gas, clutch it up, immediately hit the brake, and you're just gonna do that over and over until you think you've kind of started to get that reflex of hitting the foot brake to bring the front end down. So notice I stayed on the throttle. I think that's the best way to get the feeling of brake brings the front end down, but you don't have to. You can just pull it up, chop the throttle, pull the clutch in, and hit the brake. The front end's going to come down real hard when you do that, but it is an option. So you probably don't have to give it that much gas. You're just going to keep doing that. You're probably going to stall the bike a lot, but the benefit to this is when you get to the point where you're ready to start bringing the front wheel higher while doing those drills, like once you think you might be starting to learn the brake and you want to get a feel for bringing the bike to balance point, if you were to pull the front wheel up and just loop out immediately, you're barely moving. So it's going to be the best case scenario. This is how I learned to do wheelies, was this method, and I think I looped like 3 times, but it was just onto the 12 bar, and I kind of just held the bike and stepped off, and it was no big deal. One of the biggest benefits to this method, other than if you loop it you're barely moving, is once you get to the point where you're actually starting to try and, you know, you're using the brake and you're carrying the wheelies out, by dragging your foot like this, it's gonna make it way easier to keep these wheelies like straight and just stable. I mean, like, look how slow I'm going, because I'm just barely dragging my foot. So it's if you're like, especially if you think you've already learned the foot brake reflex but you're just struggling with the bike falling side to side or anything, try this method. Like I said, you're probably still gonna loop, but it is a huge help in the beginning for keeping it straight. You might have to experiment with like where you're sitting on the seat. Like you might have to sit further over to the left, or you know, just also if you can practice this shit going uphill, like I'm on a hill right now, that makes it way easier. But I mean, just look at how much more control it gives you just dragging your foot. The only thing to be careful of is, and this might be obvious, when you're dragging your foot like that, and for whatever reason you put a lot of pressure on that foot that you're dragging, whether it's because you're tipping over or something, it's going to push you off the seat usually. Like you're going to lift yourself up off the seat, obviously, right? So just don't jam your foot into the ground. You're just dragging it very lightly. You're probably going to go through a few pairs of shoes doing this, depending on how much you do it. But I think this is like the ultimate cheat code for learning to wheelie. So try it. Like I said, it doesn't work for everyone. It is going to feel extremely awkward in the beginning, but just give it a chance, unless you feel like you're absolutely just gonna die, or if you're just too short. Like one of my friends, I tried to get them to do that method and they did not like it, at least on the bike they were on. They did it on a smaller bike and it worked for them. So yeah, get the smallest bike you can, try the foot down method, and that's I think that's everything I wanted to kind of talk about, and that kind of covers everything. And like I said, just you are most likely going to crash. You need to be okay with that. Like you're probably gonna crash, but I mean, everybody crashes at some point if you're actually like trying to learn stupid stuff. So yeah, just be careful.